Well, hello, my friends. Welcome to me, your host, Christian Watson. As many of you have probably heard, there was a tragic event that occurred on 4th of July in Highland Park, Illinois. A deranged man went ahead and shot up a 4th of July parade, causing many hundreds of people to scatter, killing, I believe, seven confirmed dead, and injuring dozens others, more than dozens of others. And of course, in the wake of such mass tragedies, what normally happens is people try to search for the answer. Why? Why did this happen? So this individual, and I'm not going to say his name. Normally, I am sketchy about saying names. Sometimes I have different opinions, but I'm not going to say the name because I don't want to embolden him. But I will use this man's alias, and I will also refer to him as the Highland Park shooter. But the Highland Park shooter, who also went by the other name, Awake the Rapper, on the internet, was immediately looked into, and a bunch of different assumptions were being drawn about this man from different sides of the political aisle. People on the right were claiming that he was a member of Antifa, and he had leftist opinions, and he was retweeting things about January 6th, and he absolutely hated America. People on the right were pointing to the fact that he wore a Trump sign around his body, and he held an American flag, as if the American flag is indicative of some kind of political ideology. But that's a different story. He had a Pepe the Frog shirt on, which, in all honesty, Pepe the Frog is a meme. It is a meme that has been associated by proximity with certain political ideologies, but it is not necessarily an indicator of political ideologies. Regardless, both sides are trying to claim him, and I made a tweet saying that both sides are getting this wrong. Not because I'm trying to participate in both side-ism, which is a plague on our conversation, which prevents us from actually getting settled issues on important matters, but because I'm trying to get people to look at the serious matter here. Now, just very quickly on this, there are those amongst us who would, in the wake of any shooting of any kind, not just of this kind, call for gun control to address the matter. And it's very interesting that people want to use government tyranny to stop tyranny against individuals. That's simply not how you counter bad principles with more bad principles. But my friends, we don't need gun control. What we need to do as individuals, as Americans, is confront wicked and warped value systems with better value systems. The gun is simply the medium for actualizing a certain value. A gun is simply a tool that is impotent, that is useless without a value impulse. So for example, hunting is a value. If you want to go hunting, the gun is secondary to your desire to hunt. And if you want to destroy people, the gun is simply secondary to your desire to destroy people. You will find other means to destroy people if the medium is taken away. This is the great confusion of our era, that mediums and values are the same thing, that subjects and objects have no distinction. And so long as we continue to endeavor in this folly, so long as the gun control lobby continues to endeavor in this folly, the more incoherent their argument shall become. There's also another strand of analysis that misses the point as well. There are people saying, well, this guy was just mentally ill and crazy, and we need to address that issue. My friends, there's a deeper phenomenon going on here with Awake the Rapper and the tragedy he committed. A deeper phenomenon that is revealed by a proper reading of his social media history, by a proper understanding of the videos that he had on YouTube before they were taken down, and by a proper understanding of the lyrics of his music. And that is the phenomenon of nihilism. Most people want to point to mental illness, but you can be perfectly mentally sane and still endorse nihilistic principles. Now, many of you probably have heard the word nihilism, but have not heard the idea explored in a philosophical sense. And my contention throughout this video is going to be that the motivator for this guy was nihilism, whether he knows it or not, whether you know it or not. And to understand his actions, you have to understand nihilism. And this sort of explosion of nihilism in our culture calls for philosophy as an answer and a solution. So what is nihilism, my friends? I'll take you through a brief history and understanding of the idea. So nihilism comes from the Latin word nihil, which means nothing, or it means to nothing, to bring nothing. And that word is oftentimes merge with the verb annihilate, which means to bring to nothing. So nihil literally means the word nothing. Annihilate means to bring to nothing, and this is the premise behind nihilism. Nihilism believes that all meaning in the world is nonsense. He believes that there is no meaning in life, there is no value in life, there is no meaning in anything. Everything, by its very nature, is simply meaningless. That is the idea of nihilism. So what we call this in philosophy, we call this a philosophy of negation, meaning that it rejects any meaning, any value that rests within any concept or idea. So for example, if I say that life is good, that is a statement of value. But the nihilist would say, no, life is not good or bad. Life is meaningless, and therefore it negates the value. This is what nihilism is. Now, historically, nihilism was oftentimes first used, according to the Internet Encyclopedia of Philosophy, first used in its earliest iterations by a Russian anarchist who believed that negating value, negating meaning, would actually be a gateway towards freedom. Because the idea was that meaning and values and all these things that we have to understand the world and to give meaning to life hold us down and bind us to the expectations of these institutions, like the church, that actually, in the view of those people, decide what is meaningful, decide what is valuable. It's like a power tool in their understanding. Now, eventually, nihilism became associated with anyone who dared to challenge institutions in society, which was really an improper reading of nihilism, but that's what it became associated with, because the same kind of people who were doing that happened to have nihilistic philosophies. But then nihilism became affiliated with radical skepticism of everything. And so this is when Nietzsche, Friedrich Nietzsche, the famous philosopher, comes in and he takes up the mantle. And Nietzsche says in The Will to Power, he describes what nihilism is, and he says that nihilism will essentially bring about the depth of culture and that it's a problem that needs to be confronted. Now, Nietzsche, interestingly enough, while he rejected nihilism, his solution, his alternative was not any better. In his book, The Genealogy of Morals, Nietzsche describes the idea of responsibility as a sort of straitjacket on the individual. So the fact that you have responsibilities as a person, according to Nietzsche, is a straitjacket. And the free and liberated individual will be he who becomes a super moral person. And he mentions that being moral and being autonomous are two different things. So if you want to be a free person, you cannot also be moral, according to Nietzsche, or at least not moral in the sense that society wants you to be. So Nietzsche had this idea that to liberate yourself from society, you have to basically create your own moral value system, which is just as troubling as nihilism, and I'll get into that in a second. It's not nihilism because it suggests that what you hold to be meaningful is meaningful by the fact that you hold it to be, but it's predicated on a similar basis that is just as slippery and just as concerning. But so then after Nietzsche, you get Nietzsche talking about nihilism and how it's this threat to culture, how it's this, and how we need to kind of have this tension towards it. Then the existentialists come in. Jean-Paul Sartre, a famous French existentialist, who's also a Marxist, by the way. Albert Camus, who wrote The Stranger, The Myth of Sisyphus. And they come in and say, okay, guys, this world is totally and completely meaningless. However, we can create our own meaning, our own subjective sense of meaning. For Sartre, the meaninglessness of the world meant freedom. The fact that the world was meaningless for Sartre is an indicator of freedom. For Camus, it's an indicator of the need to constantly be in tension with life. Camus believed that life was a constant struggle, a constant pushing in of useless things, kind of like Sisyphus, pushing the boulder up the hill, of useless things into the void. That's what he believed. But in this sort of absurdity of life, Camus thought we could find something, even if it only related to us. Now, what is the problem with the Nietzsche's idea of meaning and the Sartre's idea of meaning and Camus' idea of meaning? The problem is very simple, is that the existentialist in Nietzsche think value and meaning rest within the individual's desires. Now, my friends, human beings are dynamic animals. We are creatures of vast potential. And we are the only creature on this earth who has the creative faculty to take something that we imagine and implement it in reality, and then to reproduce thoughts that we felt many years ago and implement those into reality and use those to inform our thoughts, all through our ability to reason, to think, to understand things. We are the only creatures on this earth who are able to do this, which is why our civilizations are as advanced as they are. But the problem is this: just as man is great in his capacity, man is also limited by his flaws. And part of the flaws of humanity is the ability for our dynamic potential to not necessarily always serve our highest good. Sometimes we get mad. Sometimes we get sad or angry. And the problem is, if your understanding of what makes life meaningful is based on how you feel, you will never have a consistent understanding of what makes life meaningful, and therefore you will slip into the same problem posed by nihilism, which is the destruction of meaning. Your sense of meaning will be so inconsistent that you might as well not have meaning in the first place. This is the problem with the existentialists, and this is why I urge all of you to please, as it relates to at least Sartre and Camus, do not accept their projects. Do not accept this idea that all meaning is subjective in life. Don't accept that idea, because it leads to bad places. Because guess what? You're not always going to feel good. So if I can't root meaning in myself, where can I root meaning in? Well, that's the problem. You root meaning in the external, in reality. And there's this tension, my friends, between the subjective and reality. And if you believe that life is subjective, you're not going to be able to actually see reality for what it is. Reality is what it is, and it is not what it is not. And the mind has no control over what reality is. So, I'll get back to these ideas later. How does this all relate to Awake the Rapper, the Highland Park shooter killer? In his songs and in his videos, there are several indications that Awake was not even a subjectivist. He was a full-on nihilist. And his nihilism led to the tragedy we saw in Illinois the other day. So let me read to you a few specimens of his sentiment found in his work. This is an excerpt from his song called Toy Soldier. Now, in that song called Toy Soldier, the music video has a depiction of him getting into a shootout, killing a bunch of innocent people, and then being in a puddle of blood while the police have their rifles aimed at him. Interestingly enough, a similar scene happened when they arrested him a day or so ago, as of the posting of this video. But he says the following sentence in Toy Soldier. He says, F-U-C-K, what is real? I just want to scream. Sometimes it feels like I'm living the dream. Living the dream, nothing is real. I just want to scream, F this world. Then in another song called Out of This World, he says, day after day, I've been wasting away, escaping the game that I wanted to play. Out of balance, I just can't stand it. Feel out of place in this awakened state of panic. I swear I need you, but I also don't. I've been failing, kind of feeling like I'm floating. So both in Toy Soldier, he doesn't understand what is real, and he's kind of rejecting the idea that what he is even experiencing is happening in reality, because apparently to him, it's happening in a dream state. But then in his other song, he's like, no, I'm in this awakened state of panic, and I don't need you, maybe I do. So this not understanding what is real brings forth inconsistent thoughts, and thoughts that have no basis to them. And if you are the own adjudicator of your thoughts, if there is nothing else to check your thoughts outside of yourself, you will ultimately decide what is right and wrong. And that is why he decided, I bet you it's why, I have a good idea of it's why, he decided to go ahead and kill people. Because again, what was the moral basis for their life? What was the value of their life? Again, according to the nihilist, value doesn't exist. People, this is right in front of us, and we're not seeing it. This is the existential civilization. It's nihilism. Let's go on. In his video called Are You Awake? I call it the Sleepwalker video. He has the following to say. Like a sleepwalker, I am breaking through no matter what. Like a sleepwalker, unable to stop and think, my actions will be valiant and my thought is unnecessary. I know what I have to do. I know what's in it. Not only for me, but for everyone else. So he has the ability to decide everyone else's value in life, everyone else's sake in life. How arrogant can you be? Where am I going? I don't know. I don't care. There is no past or future, just the now. This is the sentiment actually articulated by Jean-Paul Sartre in his novel De Nausea, where he says the past does not exist, the future does not exist, only the now exists. And this is a broader debate in philosophy too. And it's a very troubling thought. Because if there's nothing holding you to the past, if there's nothing, no reference point for your behavior, how can your behavior be informed by anything more than your own whims and desires? Again, this is the breakdown of proper behavior that happens when you think that life means what you think it means. It means something beyond your ability to even rationalize it, my friends. 1 second, we'll get there. We're getting somewhere right now. He says, it is more abstract than I could ever imagine. Like it's unstoppable. Like a wave pulling me under. I can't breathe without it. I cannot see or hear what I don't want. It is my destiny. Nothing can stop me, not even myself. Is there such a thing as free will? Or has this been planned out like a cosmic recipe? So again, with the nihilist not believing that life has any value, not believing that there's any meaning behind anything, also means thinks his actions are meaningless. Because the idea of free will is the idea that you as a human being have the control over your actions, and therefore you would have moral culpability over your actions as well. If you control them, you are responsible for them. But for him, it's like, oh, no. Everything is just planned out for me. I'm just a character in a script written by someone else. And this relates directly to the meaning of toy soldier. See, no one wants to talk about how the fact that a toy, what is a toy? A toy is a synthetic, artificial creation made for a particular end, a particular purpose. A toy has no agency, a toy has no mind, a toy has no will, a toy has no ability to rationalize anything. A toy is simply something to be used and played with by whoever made it, this sort of higher intelligence, and he calls himself a toy soldier. Guys. Mental illness is not a sufficient answer to what I have just read to you and I have just shown to you. It is a rejection that life is anything more than an illusory thing given meaning by human beings. It is a rejection of the fundamental idea of meaning. It is a rejection of the notion of an objective reality. It is a rejection of everything that allows us to continue to live in the best and most proper way possible as human beings. Because the moment man rejects reality and goes against it, well, reality always wins, no matter what you do. You can't breathe water. You can't drink fire. There are certain rules that are hard and fast, and beyond the physical rules of nature, there are also certain things you cannot do to other human beings without causing a breakdown in society or a breakdown within yourself. And allowing your passions to overtake yourself can lead you to destructive ways. If man has no control over his emotions, if he doesn't have the ability to rationalize and think before he acts, then he has no rational basis to his actions, which means his actions will not be informed by anything than how he feels, which means one day he could be very happy, next day he could be very angry, he could be shooting people, just like this guy. The consequences to the subjective idea of life, the consequences also to nihilism, are tragic. But those two ideas are not wrong because of the consequences. They're wrong because they completely misunderstand the nature of reality, the nature of life. My friends, the meaning of life, what is the meaning of life, is a question that is perhaps the most overused and overrated in philosophy. But it is a question that, if you approach it in a healthy way, can lead to very good conversations and very good insights. But guess what? Almost every tradition on this planet has some kind of answer to it, whether it be Christianity. If you're a Christian, the meaning of life is to live in subservience to the rules of Christ and to eschew sin. If you're an Aristotelian, the meaning of life is to reach eudaimonia, reach human flourishing by acting with good character, by pursuing virtue as much as you can. If you're a Muslim, the meaning of life is service to Allah. Regardless, whatever tradition you're in, there's already answers to this. The problem is, a lot of people are naturally unsatisfied and restless with what these answers are, either because of their reaction to the answer itself, And this is the case for people who were raised Christian and have seen some things in the church they didn't like, whether that be valid or whatever, is not the case here. And they have said, you know what? The church did this when I was young to me when I was young, therefore I reject the church. Or people who just aren't satisfied with the narratives they're told. Either it's because of personal affiliation, or because they're just stuck in their head and they're never satisfied with anything. They're an extreme skeptic. And skepticism of the extreme sort reaches a point where you cannot justify anything without trying to find a way to poke a hole in it. And if you operate in life constantly fighting with reality, you have no way to live in a productive manner. Things break down. And even if you do ask yourself, what's the meaning of life? What's my purpose in this world? You can't entertain an objective fact that life exists, that the world exists, with subjective ideas. This is where the existentialists go wrong. They try to say, well, the world is meaningless, so let me make my own meaning. But the world, the fact that the world exists, is an objective fact. So how are you going to deal with the objective with the subjective? How are you going to address a fact with an opinion? The fact that you exist is, again, a fact. The only way you can find meaning in life, my friends, is by sourcing it directly in reality. I'll close with this. I was reading a natural law theorist, Gershom Carmichael, and he said that we have certain duties to other people, but also to ourselves. And we have a duty to a sound mind. And what he meant is we have a duty to ward away things with our reason that would seek to disrupt our ability to think clearly. Because, again, if man is not thinking clearly, he cannot act clearly. If he cannot act clearly, his actions will not conform with reality, and he could do destructive or stupid things. If a man thinks he is a flying squirrel and he jumps off a building and he cracks his head on the pavement, he has just ended his life because he wouldn't conform with the rules of reality. The fact that you are able to live, accentuated by the fact that you have the ability to be creative, accentuated by the fact that you have the ability to be productive, accentuated by the fact that you have the ability to understand the nature of reality more than any other being on this earth. The idea that all those things I just mentioned are ingrained into who you are as a human being, that is enough, my friends, to make your life valuable. That is nothing to scoff at. The fact that out of the thousands of other animals and insectoids and other kind of things that have walked the earth way before humanity, humanity is the youngest species on this earth. There are species that walk amongst us that have been around for thousands of years. The fact that out of all of them, we have the most capability, the most potential, and we can actualize these things through faculties, through features of our existence that are ingrained into every human being, that is nothing to scoff at. And that has allowed us to create, to bend the world to our wills by operating within its limits and create civilizations that allow us to live longer, preserve life, and better appreciate just what reality is. The problem is our civilizations have become woefully distracted with so many superfluous matters. The fact, my friends, that you're a human being endowed with these great powers of rationality, these great powers of understanding, that is enough to give value to your life. That is enough to give meaning to your life, even if you feel a certain way. Because as I mentioned, the passions are an inferior way to perceive the world. You can only perceive the world by looking outside of yourself with the faculty of reason. The passions are concerned with how you feel. You're not the center of the universe. You have to look outside of yourself. My friends, it is of existential importance to reject nihilism, to reject existentialism, and to understand that in the tension between your opinions of yourself and what reality is, we should always seek reality. We should always seek what can be known. And if we find that we don't know something, we should keep seeking, keep questing, that questing spirit, which is indicative to a life well lived. If you're feeling like life is meaningless, if you're feeling like you don't know where you are in life and you don't know if it's worth living, I encourage you to go ahead and get help. But I also encourage you to understand one thing. And I will say this as someone who has suffered with depression and someone who still suffers sometimes with depression. I will say this. I will say this, my friends. Each and every one of you, by virtue of your humanity, has the ability to do so much with your reason, so much with your life. You are only limited by how creative you're willing to get. Well, Christian, there are external things limiting me. I understand. But even the most impossible situation can be subverted with a little bit of creative thinking. There are people in wheelchairs who have managed to build families, become wealthy or whatever. Not saying that's the apex of life, because it's not. There's nothing you cannot do so long as blood courses through your veins, so long as your spirit and body is animated by consciousness. But you have to be willing to do two things to activate your abilities. You have to be willing to accept reality for how it is, and you have to be willing to recognize just how brilliantly designed you are as a human being, and then use the features of your design to go ahead and take the world by storm. Don't end up shooting up people. Don't end up getting involved in despair. Don't end up doing any of that stuff. Embrace yourself. Embrace self-love. And proceed from that point, my friends. Think on it, my friends. I love you guys so much. If you love me, please be sure to go to Patreon and support me a little bit with money. Patreon.com/officialcwatson. Please be sure to go to PayPal. It's going to be officialcwatch@gmail.com. Please be sure to go to my Discord, which is in the comment section down below. Please be sure to like this video, to subscribe to this channel, to share this video, to comment on this video. Please be sure to let me know how you think I did. My friends, this world's getting scarier every day, but guess what? There's also so much light. And I encourage you guys to walk in and see the light. My friends, I love you guys so much, and please stay pensive. Bye, guys.